Well, hey, y'all, how you doing?
Good morning, y'all.
Welcome to, or afternoon,
I don't know.
midday.
Sure.
Good midday to you.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're with us. This is Let's Talk. We're going to be talking about covenant friendships. We're going to be, here, let me get all this stuff off of here. We're going to be getting a little more in depth about what we discussed on Sunday morning and hopefully a little more practical. And to be honest with y'all, I don't know if you deal with it. I don't know if it's an issue for you. But as we've been thinking through this, even talking amongst ourselves right now, between us,
yes, another 30 people in the room.
Yeah.
No, I'm teasing.
This can be a painful subject. This can be a subject that's difficult to discuss for some people. And the question I want to pose to you, and I want you to post it in the comments, is who is your best friend in
high school is what you said.
Yeah, middle school, high school. Who is someone that you would consider your best friend? And then the follow-up to that is, are you still friends with them? Because I've met some people that were friends with people in elementary school, and they're still friends.
Which I really think is cool. Either it's cool or they live in a very, very small town and they don't have access to transportation outside of that very small town.
Is that like my hometown? Is that what are you throwing?
Right. Maybe. Maybe that's a good example to use. Well, and when we were discussing what we were going to talk today, I just went, I can't start with anything cutesy today.
Let's pull this mic
Yeah,
down.
he's always going to adjust that. It's kind of painful for me.
Yeah. It's okay. So I've got a really good friend. She and I have been friends as long as I can remember. Her birthday was yesterday. Anita Beth. And she's a dear friend of mine. We don't communicate a whole lot. We don't talk a whole lot. But I know that I can depend on her. I know that I can trust her. It's the same thing. I mentioned Pat on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Pat is the same one. And I don't know if Pat or Nancy are looking at this, but hey, Nancy probably more than Pat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's Facebook friend, I friend you or I unfriend you or something like that.
So put in here, who was that friend? Who was that friend? And are you still friends with them? Because we're talking about covenant friendships. We're not talking about these passing friendships. We're talking about friendships that remain, friendships that we are created to be in, because again, God is a God of covenant. God is a God of covenant, and he has created us in a covenant way to be in covenant friendships, relationships. And so, so put that in there, put in the comment. Brenda, you just put K. And I know y'all are very dear friends. And, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how to deal with the messiness of friendships. Friendships are tremendous, great, wonderful, but they're also messy at times. And so we're going to talk about how to deal with restoring damaged relationships, how to restore those friendships that we care about and matter to us. And so the first thing I want to do is talk about how to develop friendships. I had someone recently tell me we need an app just to make friends. And sadly, it's kind of where our culture is. It's kind of like a dating app, but a friendship app. And yet what's interesting is we're around people all the time. We're face to face with people a lot, not just us, but y'all and everybody. And yet it's so difficult to make friends. It's so difficult to develop and cultivate and nurture those friendships. And so I want to walk through some simple things. As I was typing these out, I was kind of convicted. I'm like, oh, I need to do that. And I need to do that. So how do you develop a friendship? How do we grow friendships? And Faith said it's afternoon. It is afternoon now because it's 12:05.
Oh, it's brilliant.
I don't know if that's what she's saying. But anyway, okay, the first thing is this. Create multiple lines of communication. And we have so many ways to communicate with people today. We have texting, we have email, we have phone, we have face-to-face, we have whatever. And so a way to nurture, grow, develop these friendships is to create multiple lines of communication. Now, what the experts tell us is even though we have all these forms of communication, we are probably the least connected emotionally and intimately than we've ever been before as a culture.
I believe that. And I think, I think that starts very young too. Yeah. Because I can't even answer that question. I can tell you that the first question that you asked about your friend, who was your best friend in high school. I mean, I grew up in a small town, and so you're basically thrown into school with people who become they become your friends. But I sure didn't know Jesus back then. And right. There were probably many of us who didn't. And I carried that on through my life for a very long time. That you said the emotional connection. And I think that's what we all long for. It's, I'm going to walk with you, and you're going to touch on that. But we carry those things from our childhood, those formative years. And only Jesus can change that.
Yeah. And it's contextual to a large degree. I mean, Marcy said she grew up in a small town. She really doesn't know what a small town is because I grew up in a small town, 1,200 people, 26 people in my graduating class, 13 people in my first grade class. 11 of those 13, I went from first grade to 12th grade with.
Well, you get an award today.
Yeah. But the thing about it is the question, am I still friends with any of those people?
That's a great question.
And I'm friends with two.
And are you friends with them, or do you know them still?
No, I'm friends with two of them, Lyndall and Beth.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a core reason, and y'all, this is really important, I believe, a core reason is because our friendship began with the fact that we were raised in the same town, but then our friendship grew out of a relationship with Jesus.
I believe
and so our connection became far greater out of that.
Yeah.
And so, getting back to the first point, multiple lines of communication. Find ways to communicate with the people that are your friends, that you care about. The second thing that we can do is communicate regularly, but make it worthwhile, make it substantive, make it something that matters. Now, as we had a discussion in staff about some people just want to call and chat and hang out and, hey, what's going on? And all those things are great. But when do you get down to the more intimate aspect of friendship?
Yeah, because that's so risky, Scott.
It is.
That is being so vulnerable on so many. You risk hurt. You risk someone really seeing what is or isn't going on inside of you. It's really out of your control to some degree.
Yeah. And that's a good thought. Do y'all struggle? Do you struggle with risking in friendship? Because I know that probably everyone that comes on here has been hurt in friendships. And are you willing to risk? And what I would say is God's created us this way, even though you've been hurt, even though people maybe haven't stepped into your life the way you want them to, or you haven't stepped into theirs the way they need you to. Are you willing to risk? Are you willing to continue to step into who God's created us to be? And so we need to have those open lines of communication, and we need to communicate on a regular basis. And I struggle with this. I struggle with this with my family. And so as I was making this list, I'm like, I got to do that. I mean, if I really want friendships, I've got to communicate regularly with them. And it needs to be important, substantive stuff.
It really does. But one of the things that I hear you saying too is just that you said communicate regularly. And this just keeps going on in my head, is just being present too. Like, so you're present in the conversations, not just conversations that don't have depth, but present there, and not just talking to somebody. But I don't know if there's a difference, but
yeah, we're gonna get to that with 10 tips of Christian friendship.
10 tips.
10 tips. The third thing is, and this is kind of a random thing, but try to connect at least every 2 weeks. If we let a lot of space into our friendships, they're naturally going to degrade.
Yeah.
It's like everything. And so it takes energy and it takes effort. And Brenda, you just posted you're willing to commit. And that's the thing. We have to commit to the friendships. We have to recognize that they have to be nurtured. They have to be developed. They have to be cultivated. And I'm bad at that sometimes. Mm-hmm. Again, not only with my friends, but with my family.
Yeah.
And
our daughter's really good at this. I mean,
yeah,
she really doesn't go more than like maybe 3 or 4 days without sending something. She's really good at that. But that's, yeah.
Yeah, and she speaks it. She speaks her need. She speaks her need of, hey, I need to communicate more with y'all, or I need more of this from y'all. And so it's hard if your friends are not following Jesus. I'm assuming that's what you're saying, Faith, and you want to bring them along and they resist. Yeah, the difficult thing with that, you go over to what Paul says in Corinthians, where he says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what does light have to do with darkness? What does darkness have to do with light? And it's difficult because to be yoked to someone is this bar over two animals, two beasts of burden. And so if you're unequally yoked, then there's a tendency for that friendship to be pulled one way or another, because you're not going in the same direction. And so someone is going to have to give in. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe that that's why we're called to be not unequally yoked.
Be unequally
That's
yoked.
it. That's what I meant to say.
It's like double negatives.
And then you go back into Scripture, and God is consistently calling the people of God together. I mean, he says, you are a blessing to the pagan nations. You're a blessing. I will bless you to be a blessing to all nations. But they were to be in relationship. Mm-hmm. The people of God were to be in relationship with one another. And we struggle with that because we want to be connected with people who aren't following Jesus. And yet the depth and the substantive nature of that is impossible because they're not following Christ. And we've committed our life to follow Christ, and they're out doing their own thing. So that is a big struggle. You're exactly right. The next part, connect with them every 2 weeks, but then spend time with them. Find ways to grab coffee, to grab lunch, to grab dinner, to have them over at your house. I was talking to someone this week about living a single life, and what they said is it was really difficult because they were involved in a church, they were involved in a community, and yet after the worship experience, they would hear people talking about going out and eating lunch together and doing everything together, but they were never invited to that. And so we've got to be intentional about spending time with the people that we want to develop friendships with.
And I have to be really honest, because just like we've been talking about in covenant relationship, friendship with God, there are priorities that we have to make. Then if we are super busy all the time, then what needs to go in order to cultivate those things? What needs to go in your mind that makes you feel better, or I've got to get these done. And you may have to get those done, but at the expense of what? Right.
At the expense of friendship, relationship, connection, having our soul spoken to through someone else. Yeah, we definitely have to prioritize these friendships above other things that are happening in our life. But it's being present with people. We talked 2 weeks ago about the most important friendship that we have is friendship with God, and being present with him. And at times just shutting our mouth and being with him. Well, that's the same thing with our friends. We need to be present with them.
Yeah.
The next step is to offer to help, be available to help. And there's a tendency that we do this from a position of convenience. If it's convenient for me to help, then I'll help. If it's not convenient for me to help, I won't help. And yet there are many times that I think we can help, and we choose not to. And it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to lay a guilt trip, but I think if we want to develop the friendship, then we will make ourselves available to help that friend.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to those priorities. I love the phrase, hey, what can I do to help? When a friend risks all to share depth, whether it's sadness or whether it's joy, let's just, how can I celebrate with you? Or, Marcy, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And sometimes, that risk of what can I do to help you, that when someone just says that, and then you get to share maybe where your struggle is or what's going on or anything, and maybe they can't help, but help physically. But sometimes help comes on the way of just an acknowledgement of what you're going through. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Or how can I celebrate you? Or, oh, let's just jump up and down right here and now. So I'm learning, and it's taken me 57 years to learn this, that there's a wide variety of ways to respond in those friendships in that regard. But the caveat here is, how present am I willing to be to do those things or to respond in that way?
Well, and that goes back up here to spending time with them and developing and cultivating the relationship.
Right.
The next step is not only to be available to help, but also to ask for help. Mm. A lot of times our pride gets in the way. We aren't willing to ask for help.
Yeah.
We aren't willing to cry out. I had a friend of mine one time, and he said, Scott, when is it okay to say ouch? And in that context, he was hurting. Mm. Now, the way he had interacted and the way he had kind of fleshed that out may not have been the most appropriate thing, but he was hurting. And he was wondering when it was okay to say ouch. And would I step in? Would I be a friend to him? And so it's important to ask for help. The next one, and Marcy just talked about this, is celebrate the important moments with your friends. Mm-hmm. And we have a multitude of ways of finding out what these moments are. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have text, there's so many ways for us to communicate with one another, what we're excited about, what we're enthusiastic about, what's bringing joy to our lives, that other people can come alongside us and celebrate those things with us. But to celebrate those things intentionally with our friends is vitally important. The next point I wrote down is, don't get frustrated when people don't respond immediately to you. We live in this instant gratification society where everything happens instantaneously. And I'm intentional. I don't make myself available 24/7, 365. I don't think that's healthy. And so there are times I don't answer my phone. There are times that I don't respond to my email when other people, and there have been people that, there have been times that people have been less than appreciative of that, or less than polite about that. I've got to create boundaries. You've got to create boundaries. And so we should understand that about one another. We should understand that we should offer patience, and we should extend grace in those moments, and not immediately come to conclusions about, oh, they're mad at me, or they're a horrible person because they haven't responded. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances. And
we can't presume to know everything.
Exactly.
And so that's just the bottom line. So, the Lord gave us grace and mercy, and he knows everything.
So we need to be careful not to respond out of spite, not to respond out of anger or frustration, but to offer patience, or to live in patience and extend grace. And the last one is the difficult one. We need to realize that sometimes friendships die and degrade and just become less. And I've got some of those friends. I know Marcy has some of those friends, and it may be distance, it may be proximity, it may be interests, choices, priorities. There are multitudes of reasons why this happens. But the one thing I want to say is, we don't have to let it happen, we can go and check in and say, okay, are we going to have this friendship? I did this with a friend up in North Louisiana, and I sat down with him and I said, okay, this is what I need. I need a friend, and this is what this is my need. This is what I need this friendship to look like. And he looked at me and said, I don't know that I can do that. And that was honest. And we actually kind of took a break in that friendship for a period of time. We were friends again now. And a key reason for that, just to be honest with you, is as the friendship was degrading, so was the relationship with Christ in his life. But now Christ is center of his life again, and our friendship has been restored.
I kind of want to speak just a little bit to that too, because I think I'm going to use this word, reciprocity, in that regard too. When friendship it's not a one-way street. There might be times that one requires, or they need you more than you need them, or maybe not that way, but you walk beside them, carrying them more than they're carrying you, if you want to use that picture. But it's not a friendship if there's not some form of reciprocity. So even if you're carrying them and you're not able to share, man, wouldn't it be great if that friend then turned to you and say, man, I know you've got a lot going on in your life, and you know that I'm struggling. Thank you for continuing to walk with me. I just need you to know, I know that I'm just so broken right now. I just can't do that for you, but I sure do appreciate you carrying me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have to do that. We have to do that in our marriage at times. It's like, I can't meet that need right now. I'll do what I can, but this is your expectation. I can't meet that. We need to understand that.
Yeah.
So quickly, I want to run through these because I want to get to restoration process, but 10 tips for Christian friendship. The first is this: remember that the world does not revolve around you. This goes to the reciprocal aspect that Marcy was talking about. It's not just about you. It's about them. It's about what's going on in their life. Yes, it's about what's going on in your life, and they should be inquisitive about that in your life. But the world does not revolve around you. In fact, we are called as Christians, as followers of Jesus, to die to ourselves and to live for the sake of another. The second is this: be a safe place for your friends. Be a place where they can come and they know they're going to be heard. They know they're going to be listened to. They know they're going to be cared for, and be that safe place for them. Again, hoping and praying that they will be the same thing for you.
Right.
The next is be self-revealing. Don't hide your true self. Don't hide really who you are in those situations. Become vulnerable. We talked about that on Sunday, that Jonathan was vulnerable with David, gave him everything that he had. And so we need to reveal ourselves. And if you've been hurt previously in a friendship relationship, which everyone has, you're going to be tentative with that. And so I want to encourage you to make yourself vulnerable and to self-reveal. The
honest.
Yeah. The next one is don't be afraid to confront them. But do it with tact, do it with love, do it with mercy.
Yeah.
And then the immediate one following that is don't get defensive when they confront you. Because we are to be, as iron sharpens iron, we are to sharpen one another in these friendships. And the tendency is at times whenever we're confronted with things, if we get defensive, we walk away from the friendship.
Right.
We shut the door, we build a wall, whatever defensive mechanism that you put up. And so we need to be careful to allow them to speak into our lives, to allow them to speak truth into our lives.
Nobody said it's easy.
It's not easy.
I mean, defense.
It's messy.
A defensive mechanism is just that. It's a defensive mechanism because perhaps the hurt or whatever that emotion is that's going on inside is so much. You feel the need to just guard yourself. And I mean, I have done that too when something is so intense, and it's only Jesus can breathe into you the willingness to take a chance, and that regardless of what happens, that he's never going to leave you. So the way that you respond isn't contingent upon how that other person's going to respond to you, but honesty is a huge thing.
Yeah. And he's the root. He's the ultimate friend. And Jesus gives us insight into how to be friends with people.
Yeah.
The next one is cover them in prayer, minister to them.
Yeah.
Make sure Jesus is center of your friendship. Comfort and support them through hard times. Celebrate with them in good times. Don't try to change them. Don't try to make them who you want them to be. Don't try to make them into the friend that you want them to be. Let them be uniquely them. God has placed people in our lives to help us grow and to sharpen and to change and to transform us. And so let them be that. Spend time with them. Help them to grow in their faith and encourage them to pursue God's will. A true covenant friendship is one where both parties are growing in their relationship with Jesus. And so do that. And the last is, above all, love them as you have been loved by God. Just love them.
Right.
And so the last thing I want us to talk about is how to restore a damaged friendship. And the first is this. We have to recognize our blind spots. We have to recognize where we fall short. We have to recognize what we've contributed to the potential conflict.
Yeah.
And we have to admit that, and we have to confess that. And there are multitudes of things that can create that can create a chasm in a friendship. It may be a change of priorities, different personalities, different preferences. We see this right now in our culture so badly. We got people that, oh yeah, we're friends. And then all of a sudden, everything gets politicized. Everything gets polarized. Everything becomes either this or that. There's no compromise in the middle. And so we've got people that have been friends. Something has happened, whether in our culture, whether in our government, whatever. And so we get rid of them.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's compromise, though, Scott. I think that we become so polarized in that. And then we go back to some of the steps that we previously talked about. And we make that friendship all about us instead of, you know what, I'm going to be loyal and faithful to our friendship, knowing that I care about you because you have the image of God in you and I love you. We're not going to agree here, but that's not going to change how we're connected or where we are connected.
Well, and it's knowing who they are.
Yeah.
It's saying, okay, I don't agree with you on that point, but that point doesn't define you.
Yeah.
And we moved away with that. So recognize your blind spots,
right.
and don't spend all your time pointing out theirs. The next is that we need to forgive, and forgiveness is required. Forgiveness begins, y'all, and this is important. Forgiveness begins with God. If you look at what David says in Psalm 51, he said, God, against you and you alone have I sinned. He understands that his initial need of forgiveness is from God, because if then he understands that, then he can forgive the other. If he doesn't understand that he or she is forgiven by God first and foremost, then the tendency to extend that forgiveness to somebody else is going to be slim.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that we forget. I want to remember my sins, to remember how much I have been forgiven.
Right.
Because only at that point, when I remember what I've been forgiven of, then I remember how necessary it is for me to forgive others.
Right. And if I understand, if I remember and recall why I've been forgiven and what I've been forgiven for, I can easily forgive somebody else, because mine's been...
No, the stench is awful.
Yeah, God has been so gracious to forgive me, so I'm called to forgive other people. Right. And so through forgiveness, you move toward reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Reconciliation is to restore the relationship. It's to revive the relationship. And so I wrote down some steps of reconciliation. The first is find a time and a place for a peaceful conversation. Mm. And it may be the two of you, or you may need to bring in a third party, but find a time and a place. And don't do it in times that it shouldn't happen.
Right.
The next is ask God to help you discern the real causes of the conflict. A lot of times what we point to as the true conflict is not the true conflict. It's not really the issue. And so we got to find, and we got to ask God to show us what the true issue is. The next is you got to express a desire to be reconciled, a desire to be restored back into friendship with the person. If you don't want that, then it's never going to happen, because mutual trust has got to be developed.
And that's something that's huge in the world that we live in now. And I just want to say, we got to stop that.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all, we have become so polarized, and It's mask, no mask, vaccine, no vaccine, in school, not in school, in church, not in church. It's all these definitive polarized positions that friendships are being undermined by this. And it's unnecessary. It's really unnecessary. Two more, look for a win-win solution in the reconciliation. I tell people in premarital counseling all the time, if one wins, you both lose.
Yeah.
Because that relationship is so important that you got to find a place of agreement, a place of compromise.
Yeah.
And the last is this. You might need to seek out someone to come and mediate and someone to come reconcile. And there's nothing bad about that, because there are times you may be standing opposed and you want to restore and reconcile the friendship, but you need another voice.
Yeah.
And so reach out to somebody else.
Right.
Reach out to somebody you both trust. Reach out to someone that you can depend on and ask them to be a part of it. And so that is a quick process, and we're over. And so I just want you to know that when we put this on YouTube, I'm going to put all these steps and everything that we've talked about on there so you can go back and revisit. Y'all, here's one thing that I know definitively. Every person that you know has had struggles with friendship. You've had struggles with friendship. Everyone needs to hear this. And I hope this information has been moderately beneficial. I hope that you'll share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with people, share it with people, because when there are people, there are messy friendships.
And I want to also just reinforce again of the obvious. We're living in a very polarized world, and it's attacking many relationships. And I want to call him out for who he is. And that's a joy to Satan. That is a joy to Satan. So do whatever you possibly can through the power of the Holy Spirit to restore relationships. Don't walk away. Don't run away. Trust an Abba Father who loves you more than you could ever imagine, to give you everything that you need to just process through, live through whatever that hurt is, so that you can recognize victory on the other side and actually even see, feel, know the presence of God working through that friendship.
So again, thank y'all for joining us today. Sorry we had so much stuff, but I wanted to get through it all. Again, you can go to the YouTube channel, newsongcommunity.church.
Right.
And you can find all the notes to this.
Right.
Two things.
Yes. Two. Start with one.
Two.
Okay.
We have worship on Sunday, a worship experience on Sunday, 9:00, 10:30 in person, online. Come and be with us, or be with us online.
Yeah.
And we are called to be together. The second thing is we have pumpkin patch coming up.
Ooh,
and so pumpkins are coming in. We need help to unload a truck. All the money of the pumpkin patch goes to missions. And so
pay close attention to Facebook for if there's nuances of change or anything like that. You're already aware of them.
Yeah. But we need people to pass pumpkins so we can get an unload the stinking truck.
Oh, there's a third one. We would love for people to come and help us put out pallets and set up the tent tomorrow at 5:30.
Tomorrow, 5:30, Thursday at 5:30, we're putting out pallets and
out and up.
Yes. All right. So that's all. We love y'all. Thanks for being with us. Send people to the YouTube channel or share this with them. And my prayer is that your friendships will grow and be strengthened. I pray the same thing for us. And until we see you again, we love you, and we hope you have a great rest of the week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.